Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, in this episode, I have a conversation with Luther Smith. And Luther is a listener of the show, and he has been since approximately August of 2021. And I remember Luther from a couple of emails that he has sent me, one in particular that he sent, I want to say either a year ago during the summer or even 2 years ago. But it was a very, very nice email and a very nice message. And this is a very, very good man, and has a great family and a great wife and a great daughter, and they're doing it correctly. And you're going to hear that, and it's absolutely amazing, and it's just good food for the soul here. So here's how I want to introduce this. I want to read you the last email that he sent me, which he sent me this past Tuesday. And again, he's completely red-pilled. He's gone down numerous rabbit holes, and he's a very wise man, and he's sharing this information, of course, with his family to protect his family because, of course, that's vitally important these days, without a doubt, and always important. But here's what he said in his last email, and then I will play our discussion here as we talk about a number of different issues. We talk about the waking up process. We talk about homeschooling. We talk about artificial intelligence. We talk about the COVID lie. And it really is just a lot of fun here. But here's the email that he sent me. He said, "Hello, Sean." He said, "I don't know if you remember me, but I wrote you several months back. Just to jog your memory, I was the American who was married to my mixed wife, who was Mexican and German, and my daughter, who was mixed. We have moved to Missouri from California, and I had told you about understanding that Earth was flat, or what I could call a closed system, quote unquote, and that I had watched Europa: The Last Battle, and had certainly had my paradigm shifted as a result of this documentary. I had mentioned that I had difficulty adjusting to reality as I had learned it before stepping out of the Matrix. However, it's been quite an eye-opener, and I see everything differently than I did before." He said, "Well, I would like to continue sharing with you my learning where I am now." He said, "So, after I watched Europa: The Last Battle, I decided to listen to a copy of Mein Kampf. You had mentioned this several times and had even quoted from it on your podcast. Of course, since you mentioned it in passing, it is extremely difficult to find it in paperback. However, there are audio copies that are abound on BitChute. I've always told those to whom I talk that the first-person sources are always good, because then you can hear what they said in their own words rather than hearing what someone else said about them. When I began to read and listen carefully to what this man wrote, there made several observations I made about this man. First off, Adolf Hitler was very articulate in the manner in which he wrote. When I was listening to the audiobook, I kept thinking to myself, quote, "Man, nobody writes like this anymore," unquote. Yeah, he was an excellent writer. He goes on and he says his words were very intentional and even somewhat poetic at times. I was captivated by the way he would make his points. He wrote, second, almost everything that he said concerning the problems of the state of Germany at the time that he wrote in his autobiography, I found myself agreeing with. I could not believe how aligned I was on the points that were being made concerning nationalism and how one ought to have a sense of pride in one's national heritage, rather. He said, "I'm an American. I am proud of this country, and although I am disillusioned to some degree about our country, on what our country has become, due to the hands of Jews who are responsible for making our country what it is today, I look around and I see all of the problems that Adolf Hitler articulated in his book, from the destruction of our national interest by corrupt criminals who have hijacked our government, to the invasion of illegals and foreigners who have no sense of identity and pride in our country, to the ruin of our towns and neighborhoods due to the perversion of our culture, to Americans who have no sense of who they are and where they have come from." I could see the main themes he touched on throughout his book, and all of them are relevant to our culture. He wrote, third, I had to really think about the point that he made concerning the Jewish and Negrification of Germany. After reading forward and thinking about his words, I understood what he meant. Adolf Hitler was not a racist, as some claim. He praised Jesse Owens when the Olympics were held in Berlin. He worked with other countries like Africa who proudly wore swastikas on their clothes. In his statement, he was discussing the dumbing down and perversion of Germany of people who do not carry the ideas and the heritage of the country. In other words, the words that he used were discussing the invaders of Germany who pillaged and took advantage of that country's goodwill. It could be akin, rather, to me saying, quote, "These illegal aliens are destroying our way of life." He was speaking of those who were degenerates, specifically those who were tyrannical in ideology and character, not all Negroes and Jews. I became beside myself. I have often seen videos and pictures of the so-called neo-Nazis, quote-unquote, who quote statements from Hitler like this. Now I see that when they do this, they are out of context. He went on and said, "There are so many things I would like to share with you in my unlearning and relearning, but for the sake of brevity, I will give you one last thing. I saw in one of your war videos the number 14 and 88. That a father and his son were wearing on their blue shirts. For a long time, I understood what these numbers mean. However, learning what I have been learning, I've come to understand that this is not a racist statement, quote unquote. In fact, I would submit to you that there are other groups that have appropriated the 14 words for themselves and have excluded those who are white from every country under the sun. Once more, Mein Kampf touched on this also. I see the hatred for white people on television, movies, shows, and education, quote unquote. It is absolutely disgusting. Even as a human being with darker melanin, I cannot stand the smearing of a people group like this just because of the color of their skin. I recall talking to one of my friends who did not know the things that I was learning. He tried to convince me of the racism, quote unquote, that exists among white people toward blacks. And he was kind of surprised when I told him that these days this was not true. I told him that there may come a day when I will have to stand up and defend him against those who seek to take him out because of his skin. He was somewhat shocked that I said this and somewhat laughed uncomfortably. I see the smearing of white people all over the place. Nothing upsets me that these tyrants are doing this. It is my anticipation that the truth will come out and that all of the things that have been mentioned in the annals of history will be revealed for all of us to see. Our national culture has been stolen from us, our national history has been stolen from us, and our national birthright has been stolen from us. It is exhausting seeing all of this, but I would not trade it for anything because I can make sense of the world events around me and what all of it means. Sean, I know I thanked you in the last letter for your podcast, but I'm truly grateful for you and your work in bringing all of the information to us and encouraging us to learn for ourselves. Because of this, my family has had some of the best talks, and all of us are awake. It is an honor to stand side by side with you in this battle. And then he wrote this, and this is awesome too. He said, on another note, I have a clip from YouTube from CNBC to show you. I remember you talking with Dr. Robin McCutcheon on one of your podcasts, and when discussing the state of the economy, she mentioned Flippy, the hamburger machine. Yeah, Flippy. See, I didn't even know Flippy was a thing. I thought she was just joking, but she was real. She was telling the truth. Flippy is actually a thing. It says, well, I found a YouTube video discussing the state of AI, and they bring up old Flippy. I couldn't believe it. I started laughing when I watched this at the gym. I thought for a laugh I would send it to you. I actually put this a couple of places. I put this on Gab, this video on Gab, and then I also put it in one of the last war videos. The last war video, I think. It's incredible. It's just, it's actually a thing. It's a real thing. So I immediately got back to him and I said, "Come on the show and let's have a conversation. Let's hammer through the issues of the day, if you will." So, ladies and gentlemen, here is our discussion. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you learned something from it. Thanks for listening as always again, and I will catch you on Monday.
I came across your show by seeing that wonderful viral clip of you in front of the school board. And one of my friends had, from the homeschool group, as a matter of fact, had posted it on his Facebook page. And I saw, I just, I was watching it. And this was during the time, again, my awakening thing happened, and I saw, you were just giving these cats business. And I was like, who is this guy? So I decided to look you up, man, and I've been listening to you ever since. And I really, really appreciate just the knowledge that you learn and that you brought on the podcast, and it's caused me to do some digging myself. So I really appreciate that.
I appreciate you listening. I'm glad you found the show. You know what was funny about that whole school board thing is that it was a bit of a Streisand effect when it came to individuals rushing to my show and then very quickly leaving.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and I didn't. I didn't, of course, say what I said at that school board to get people to listen to my show. It wasn't even in my head. I wasn't even thinking about that. But what was funny is one of my shows, I believe on BitChute, it could have been one of the shows right before I did it. People were, again, much like you, they were like, who is this guy? And then they rushed to my show, and it got almost 200,000 listens.
Oh, wow.
And then it immediately just went away. And then it was like 4,000. And then, now it's like 1,000.
Wow.
On all platforms. Wow. And it's just like, okay, why is this happening? And then, that was weird, because I thought to myself, well, I have a pretty good idea as to why this is happening. This is happening because people don't want someone who has been in the business of education to tell people what really goes on in the business.
Yeah.
It's one of those subjects, which I've said on the show, is that it's one of those subjects where everybody feels like they can talk about the ins and the outs and analyze it as accurately as possible, having never done it.
Yeah.
And that's not really true necessarily. We all talk about different subjects that we've never actually done before, but I think it scared a lot of people because they thought, oh my God, this he's been through the ringer in the business. And, I think it just, I don't know, it seemed to scare people to some extent, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. What's cool about, just your show, just in general, is these are things that, this is one of the reasons why we homeschooled our daughter, was because of the fact that, my daughter, it was kind of interesting before we came to Missouri, the charter school that we were involved in, it was a great, great school. Her first grade teacher was amazing. Second grade teacher was cool. Third grade teacher, not so much. But when we had left, California, we were just at the cusp of, what is that? The kind of the new math. We're not going to tell you how to solve an issue,
right?
Formulaically. You just have to feel your way through it. I remember my daughter brought home a homework assignment, and she was supposed to circle terms that were identical, and the terms that were on it were, healthcare. They were like these communistic Bolshevik terms, and I'm like, we can't have this.
Right.
Yeah, this ain't good. So, luckily for us, we had ended up moving shortly after that to Missouri, and then we can homeschool our child 100% from that point. But yeah, even in a charter school like that, we're very, very good, very small class sizes. We interacted with the teachers very directly. It still was still finding its way in there. So we've always recognized it, but I think your show, helped put a little bit more dots together as to the origin of where all this came from, rather than it just popping up out of nowhere and not having any clue of where this came from or anything else like that. So
Yeah, it's frightening.
Yeah,
I mean,
it very is.
there's again, people in the education business have no idea that they are literally in the business of manipulating people,
Mm-hmm.
and that they themselves have been manipulated. And those are frankly the best people to manipulate youth, are the people who don't know that they too have been manipulated.
Yeah,
And when you point out,
absolutely.
yeah, and I mean, when you point out the paperwork, like the stuff that I read on my show and the documents I make available on the website, I mean, it's right there. It's government declassified documents talking about using the system to brainwash people.
Yeah,
And when you bring
yeah,
this to people, I mean, it frightens them.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny when individuals within that system. That's why, just like you mentioned, you have brainwashed people. Basically manipulating other brainwashed people to do this, because when that brainwashed person becomes aware of what's happening, well, then all they can do is just dump them and get another one. You know, the cycle just continues. Um, so yeah, it's crazy.
I remember your first email to me, and I want to say again, it was either last summer or the summer before. And I remember you talking about your trip from, or your moving your family from California to Missouri. Um, what year was that when you were just describing the math curriculum in your daughter's school? Around what year was that taking place?
That was around 2016, the
Okay.
year 2016. Yeah. Um, Now she had been homeschooled. Well, she had been 75% homeschooled before that, but she would go to this charter school, and then so she would go every, I think it was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then Tuesday and Thursday were our days where she would be home. And again, us, I can't imagine. We were very, very intentional about making sure that we checked her work. Because again, we lived in California. We knew the politics of it. We didn't actually, to be honest with you, we both my wife and I are from California, but we never felt like we were at home there. Um, as a matter of fact, we feel more at home here in the Midwest than we did ever in California. Um, and so we were very, very intentional about making sure that we always checked her work, we always checked her homework. We were very, very just active in that regard. And then I think around the spring of 2016, um, we began to notice some of her work changing. Some of the some of the uh, um, some of the mathematics, social studies, things like that. And we would sit down and we would talk to her, and she's our only child, and so we've always talked to her like an adult, like a grown up. So she's very articulate, but we would tell her, hey, do this, but don't do this. And if they say, why didn't you do this? You just tell them that we said not to do this. Uh, and so she started doing that. And then it got to the point where, again, we would sit down and talk with the teachers, and we would tell them, why are you teaching this? This has nothing to do with anything that she needs to know. Like, you need to be teaching her essentially a reading, writing, and mathematics. That's pretty much it. And basically, one of the teachers, this was during the fall before we had ended up leaving, she said, well, I'm going to end up teaching standard. I'm going to teach standard. And we're like, look, if this is the standard, then the standard sucks.
Right.
The standard sucks. Like, this has nothing to do with learning, like at all. And so, like I said, we didn't have to wait longer, because we were on the road about a month, probably about several months after that, and we ended up coming to Missouri, and we had basically vowed that we were going to just have my wife, Tanya, she was going to stay home and finish out wisdom school then. and then and since then it's worked. It's worked. We've been able to teach her, what we want. Um, she didn't have full days, like at the charter school. Um, we were able to have conversations about anything and everything under the sun. And yeah, it's been incredible, just to see the growth. And by the way, Sean, just to let you know, my daughter's 16, and she met a gentleman, a young man who I think is about 16, her age, and they're already talking about getting married at 18.
No kidding.
And yes, and he is just as he's homeschooled as well. And both of our families get along. I'll tell you a little bit about that later, but both of our families get along. Um, um, he didn't take the shots either. His family didn't take the shots either. I mean, he is like 100% all in. I mean, we've had conversations, talk. Um, he questions everything. Doesn't trust government. Doesn't. I mean, we are literally a splitting image of their family, which is just incredible. So
That's amazing.
yeah, it's incredible.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, it's still a long ways away, but he's
Sure.
he's a fine young man.
That's good.
And yeah, so yeah, it was around 2016. It was around 2016 that we started recognizing the changes, and then that's when we came here, and then I started my job that I moved out here to Missouri in January 2017.
Did you have any interactions beyond the one that you just described with the school teacher? Did you have any other interactions with other teachers or even administrators in that building?
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, it's kind of, when you talk about some of the horror stories of public school, um, it was really kind of interesting. So when my daughter, when she was in third grade, she was on the monkey bars outside at the playground, and she fell off as any normal kid would, and she ended up breaking her arm. It was a clean break, well, any person, if if that happens to your daughter or your son or whatever, the first thing you want to do is call the parent, right? And let them know, hey, your kid fell off the monkey bars. I think that they might have broken their arm. You might want to come and get your kid, right? And your child and take them to the hospital or take them to get that treated.
Right.
What happened was I think it was a couple of hours after she broke her arm that they gave me a call.
Wow.
And I was like, she came in. My wife came into school, and she basically my daughter was there. Now my daughter, she never gets in trouble. She's like I said, she's an only child. She's overachiever and things like that. And so she was sitting there on a bench, kind of holding her arm, and it was like in a daze, right?
Yeah.
And we come and pick her up and stuff like that. Well, come to find out that the receptionist who was at the front thought that she was because she said that her arm had hurt really bad, right? Well, come to find out, they thought that she was lying, that she was trying to, get out of something or whatever. And so they grabbed her arm that was broken and placed her on the bench.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. And so, and turns out that they found out that she wasn't lying. I mean, go figure. And by the time we found out, she had been there 2 hours from the time that she broke her arm to the time that she was sitting on that bench. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. needless to say, I was upset. My wife was furious. She actually went back to the school and she read the riot act to the receptionist at the at the front. Um, um, uh, you know, uh, you know, how can you not believe that a child would never lie about something like that? Um, and for them just to not believe my daughter, but to grab her by the arm that was broken.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I mean, that was essentially the beginning of the end for us. That if any person treats our daughter in an environment like this, um, I, we don't want to be in part of that environment, let alone our child. I mean, we would never let that happen to us. So why would we let that happen to her? So yeah, it was awful. Yeah, so we interacted with with other teachers as well. Her fourth grade teacher was again a bit crazy. Um, 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 she would berate the students a lot, and we had to have a lots of conversations with her. Um, well, um, and of course that was about a year before we had ended up leaving, and then by the time she got to fifth grade, almost close to sixth grade, we had ended up just that's when all of the crazy curriculum and stuff started piling on. So we decided to just go ahead and just we were lucky that we were able to move. Let's just
Sure.
put it like that. And even then, even if I didn't end up moving, we still would have said, you know what, we'll make it work. We're not sending our kids back here. Not happening. So yeah.
Incredible. Well, you certainly made the move that I think God wanted you to make.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you know our vocation as mother and father is to be intentional to our children, and God certainly gives us children as a blessing, right? And we ought to see them as that. If they are, it says in the scriptures, children are, as arrows are in a quiver, so our children are a gift from God. They're a blessing. I don't understand why you would not see children as that, and treat them and not treat them as such. I don't understand that. Um, my wife and I always, when we would talk before we had children, we would always say, whatever we have to do to give our children what they needed, we would do that and sacrifice for that, to give up ourselves for the sake of our own children. I again, I don't understand how people can have children or how people can send their children to these schools who just don't care about them. You said it on your show various times that that you ought to care about your children more than they do. Um, that's the natural function.
Right.
So my wife and I have always tried to make it a point to be intentional, with with our daughter always. Um, there's no other way. Um, so yeah.
It's worked out. It sounds like it's worked out. What particular homeschooling curriculum do you use, or do you use one?
So we ended up using several others. I don't remember or recall. There were several um, homeschool curriculums that we used at a given time, depending on where she was. So we did use Rebecca. We are very familiar with that. We used that for a couple of years while we were here in Missouri. It's a great. As a matter of fact, when you recommend it, it is a great homeschooling curriculum. There are other online resources that we used as well. Um, um, I can't remember the names of them, but there were some that were completely free, and they had not only the lesson plans, but they also had like the full-on lesson itself, where you can take it and basically you can edit whatever you like. So you can add what the creator of the homeschool curriculum did, or you can, select what subject that you wanted to teach your children. So you didn't have to teach exactly the to the to the curriculum itself. You can kind of mix and match and change, and depending on the needs of your child, which is kind of cool. There was Khan Academy, too. Khan Academy, which has a YouTube channel. We were able to watch some videos of that and tailor that to her needs as well. There was also a homeschool curriculum called Versity, um, uh, CBU Versity. I was a part of that for a while, and the creator of that basically created a Christian, essentially a Christian school, and has homeschool curriculum from elementary school all the way to essentially doctoral level work. So she did the high school portion of that. Um, it was non-accredited, but she still. The rigor of it. Is almost. It's even more beyond an accredited university. And things like that. So now she is at a place called Calvary University, and she's doing online school. She's 16 and in college courses. So by the time she's about, I think, 18 or 19, she'll already have her bachelor's business.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, she graduated from high school. I think it was was it 15? Yeah, it was so crazy. We had to go out and get her a gown and like print out her own diploma. Because she just ended up just blasting through that stuff, so she's on her way. So
I got to tell you something. That right there, in my opinion, exemplifies the exact opposite of what the brainwashing has to offer for, of course, the endless individuals who have no idea that they're stuck in the matrix. I mean, if they actually listen to what you just said about your own daughter, that she graduated at 15 from high school, she'll be done with college by the time she's 18. If you tell this, if you walked onto a college or university campus and you explained that to any of them, they would have zero idea that even exists.
Yeah, they wouldn't know what to do with that.
No, they wouldn't. In fact, they'd probably get very scared and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? I mean, if they actually sat and thought about it, and thought about how they've been manipulated to the point where they don't even know that what your daughter has done and has experienced is an actual thing, then, the look on their face would be astounding.
And Sean, it's not even just the fact that she graduated. I mean, the subject matter. For instance, she was learning how to diagram Greek sentences at 14.
Yeah.
So
see,
the curriculum that she was using was again, it was a Christian, it was a biblical Christian school. And so the curriculum that they were using, she was doing Intro to Greek 1 and 2. So she learned the language and the vocabulary in Greek 1, and then in Greek 2, at the end of Greek 1, basically at the start of her second class of Greek, she was already diagramming Greek sentences. At 14, and what was so cool was I was self-taught Greek. I took 2 years of Greek myself, and so her and I would sit down and we would diagram together, and just and learn and reinforce that learning together. And so it's so funny she has so many friends. Like she'll go to like a youth group, and she'll hear the teacher teaching or whatever, and she'll whip out her cell phone and go on to her Bible app and just open the Greek text and basically walk through the text with them. And all of her friends are like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm I'm I'm reading the text." She's like, "I'm reading the Bible," and they're like, "What is that? What language is that?" They're like, she's like, "It's Greek," and they're like, "You know how to read that?"
Amazing.
So yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. I love it. God, I love it. It's just, it warms my whole body. I just love it. I love it. Incredible. So what does she, I mean, beyond getting married, what does she want to do when she's done with her degree?
So she is, now I don't know, because right now, she's young, and they're somewhat ambitious, and that's a good thing. I think what's going to end up happening, because of her perspective and her worldview, she's talking about when she gets married, spending a couple of years here and moving to Japan. Um, she loves Japan. She loves the culture. She loves the people. As you know, it's an honor culture, so she kind of loves that. She loves just kind of what it offers as a particular land. They have a couple of friends that are there, and so I think she's going to end up possibly, perhaps becoming a homemaker, and having a couple of kids. And she, I remember that I wrote in my first letter to you that she was not really into homeschooling, until the end the end of 2020.
Yeah.
And then she had basically said, we started learning some things, and she said, if I ever have kids, Dad, I'm homeschooling my kids. I'm not putting them in public school. And that warmed my heart to hear her say that, because that's exactly the same reason why we had her homeschooled, was that we weren't going to subject her to the mental masturbation, um, of just the public school. We weren't going to do it. If I had to, have 10 jobs, to sustain us, I was going to do that, because there was no way that we were going to have our daughter do that. And so they're all in for that as well. So she might move to Japan and end up becoming a homemaker, and which is absolutely fantastic. I think that she'd be a great mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
it's always been my wish and my prayer that young women were as mature as your daughter. I mean, that's always, that was, I don't want to get personal here, but that was something that I always wished when I saw women that I grew up with and girls that I grew up with. I mean, I had amazing role models as women in my life. My grandmother, my mom's mom, and then my mom, both homemakers, wanted to be homemakers, and then and married men who understood the value of that, and that there is no substitute.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, a great deal of the women that I was around, who were, roughly my age, I mean, you would bring that up to them, or I would bring that up, and they would look at me like I was a foreigner on a foreign planet. I mean, it was strange. And I remember thinking to myself, so you don't want somebody to provide for you. You don't want to raise children in a home. You want to, sit in a cubicle all day long, and you think that this is what you want to do. And, a lot of the conversations just ultimately turned into money. It was all just about money this, money that.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself again, it's, there's more to life than money.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I don't know. There has been a very unfortunate shift in our culture, and it's a purposeful shift. And there are very evil people doing it intentionally to destroy the very thing that you, of course, are building with your family. And excuse me, I mean that's just that's the constant battle and that's the constant war. But it certainly sounds like you're winning it, and I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Sean, it's interesting. I've kind of almost, and I say this tongue in cheek, but I've almost been on the wrong side of everything. And I mean this in terms of, I'm a black guy, who is a nationalist by nature. Um, I do not believe that the government should be in our business, which is really indicative. I don't. I try to be articulate as I can. I remember when I was growing up, people would call me an Oreo, um, which again is just the dumbest thing ever. Matter of fact, I remember when I was growing up, people would ask me, "Hey, why do you talk white?" And I went, "What?"
Yeah.
They're like, "Why do you talk white?" I mean, and I said, "What? Why do I talk articulately? Is that what you mean?" And they wouldn't know what I was talking about. I was like, I didn't even know that words had a color. I thought it was just you learned how to speak. My mom, who was a single mom at the time, she always taught me that you present yourself in a manner where people respect you. Um, and one of the ways that people respect you is that you learn how to talk. You don't, if your vocabulary is, she would tell me often, if your vocabulary is 25 words or less, like the thugs that we used to live around, you're not going to get very far. So I spent a lot of time reading the dictionary. I spent a lot of time just reading, period, and striving to be very articulate when I spoke, which was very unusual in the places that I live. So I got, I essentially was made fun of because I I had more than 25 words in the vocabulary, and most of them were not slang terms. Um, Most of them were, I could complete a sentence. And not only that, I believe in hard work. Um, um, I believe in, you get what you work for. That no one owes you anything. That's rather unusual, and very similar to you, and others out there who are consistent. See, uh, Sean, have you ever? It'd be kind of interesting to ask. You have there been glitches in the matrix that you noticed? I mean, I know that there was an awakening kind of moment, but were there before your time that you were completely or fully awake? Did you notice that there were glitches in the matrix? Kind of looking back on that and going, "Wow, that's unusual," or "Wow, that's weird," or "Now I know why that happened."
That's an excellent question. Um, the short answer is yes,
Mm.
and I would say that there was a well, okay. One of the first stories I would quickly bring up is that when when we lived in Arlington, Texas, my brother I was 3 years old at the time, and my brother was 5, and he went to a church school for kindergarten, which was right around the corner from where we live. And almost every single day, my mom and I would drop him off. We would drive just around the block, and we would drop him off, and I would start crying.
Mm.
And I thought to it was almost nonstop, because here I am, I'm watching my older brother walk away from us and go into this building with these other people, and I don't know why. And every single day, of course, my mom would explain it to me, and I'd go, okay. And then the next day, I'd start crying again. it was kind of weird. But then, of course, it became my turn to go to school, and we had moved to Oxford, Ohio. And of course, my dad was in the education business as a teacher education professor at Miami University. And then my mom was a former school teacher too, and a homemaker now. And I'm walking down the street with my brother now to get on the same school bus to go to the same school. And I believe it was the first day of school, I saw the yellow bus coming around the corner, and I turned around and I walked away. And I walked back home. And everybody at the bus stop at the end of the road just let me go, and they didn't say anything to me. And you know, there were at least whatever it was, almost 10 of us just standing there at the bus stop, and I turned around and I walked home. And I remember thinking again just how unnatural all of it was, even back then.
Yeah.
And then I would knock on the front door, and and you know, my mom would answer, and she'd go, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm home, and I don't want to go to school." And then there was, you know, I mean, that happened a couple of times, and then my dad put me in the car. He put me in the station wagon, and we drove to the school, and he parks in the parking lot, and he turned and he looked at me, and he said, "You can never do this again." And I went, "Okay." And then that was kind of it. I mean, I rode the bus. I rode the bus from then on out, you know, and until, of course, they started to realize what was going on the bus, and then they drove us to school. But I always remember the school environment being very unnatural. There being a lack of common sense. There being a lot of discipline. I didn't know why. You know, there wasn't a lot of critical thinking going on. It was just a lot of follow the leader. And I thought, but no one here knows how to lead, really. And it just became very difficult for me to memorize lies. So I was an average student. I mean, as the public school system would be. I got the A in the class that everybody gets an A in, and then I would get B's, C's, and D's. And I never failed anything, you know. But I just remember, again, ironically enough, it was my brother who pulled me aside once, and he looked at me and he said, and my brother never had problems in school. He was always the kind of guy who could sit in a class, listen, take a test, and get an A. And I was never that way. I was the one who always had to study hard and read everything and memorize things just to get by. And he pulled me aside one particular day because my parents were yelling at me about something, not doing some assignment or something. And he said, "Sean, it's a game." He said, "The whole thing is just a game. If you learn the rules of the game and you know how to play the game, then you'll never fail. You'll never do poorly. You'll get by, and that's all you need to do." And I remember him, again, just very simply putting it that way to me. And I thought to myself, even then, but it's not supposed to be a game. You know, it's people should want to learn. They should enjoy it. And I wasn't. So, long story short, to answer your question, I always had that in my head. I remember always thinking to myself, why is it that the environment where everybody is allegedly learning, they're making it so unfun and uninteresting? And the conclusion that I've reached is simple, and that is because they're not teaching the truth, and when you teach lies, it's not interesting. If they taught the truth, everybody would succeed. If they taught the truth, everybody would show up. If they taught the truth, everybody would learn and everybody would be interested. But they don't do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, of course, when I became a school teacher, nothing. I mean, I became a school teacher to be the opposite of everything that I saw. And then I was overwhelmed with the fact that nothing had changed. And that was a real matrix moment for me, when I thought things are as bad today as they were when I was 5.
As a matter of fact, they're designed to be that way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, I asked that question because um, um, both of us kind of recognize something, but on two different tracks. So you had mentioned that you just didn't memorize live. Well, I was like your brother. I memorized them a lot.
Right.
Growing up, I memorized all of it. So I was head deep into the Matrix. But I did notice things that caused me to scratch my head when I grew up. For example, I was always taught that within the Civil War, the North was the good side, the South was the bad side. And the South was enslaving, black individuals, and it was this, that, and the other, and the North was good, and stuff like that. I was taught that narrative, but then I learned that the first slave owner was a black guy by the name of Anthony Johnson,
Yep.
and I went, wait a minute, and he was a Southerner, and I went, um, huh?
Yeah.
I went, well, if slavery is due to racism, why is the first slave owner a black guy who had all types of slaves of different colors, quote unquote? And then I learned that, as a matter of fact, I remember back when Google wasn't censoring anybody, I found a picture of black slave owners and white slave owners, and they took a picture with the Confederate flag behind them. And then I went, if the Confederate flag is racist, why are black individuals and white individuals taking a picture behind this flag?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't. To me, that signaled to me that there was a glitch.
Yep.
In the Matrix, there was a glitch. Um, um, and then of course, reading first person sources, and accounts about how the Commonwealth worked and some of the ideas that they had, which were sourced out of the scriptures, by the way. I started thinking to myself, I don't know what to think about these inconsistencies. This was before I was able to piece it together. So there were times throughout, my life that I can remember, that there were times that throughout my life, I could remember, like, what I'm being taught in school and what I'm discovering, they're not jiving, and one of them is lying. And yeah, these markers were as clear as a bell before I became fully, aware of what was going on around me. I was able to piece all those things together, but before then I couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I attended down in Cincinnati, about 50 minutes south of me. There's an African American history museum, and it's quite literally right next door to Great American Ballpark, where the Reds play.
Oh.
And I went there once. I was on a date with a girl, and we were going to go to the Reds game, but we dipped into this museum just for a minute. And we took the tour, we paid, we took the tour, and wouldn't you know it, it is, it's interesting, but it's also as stereotypical as you would think. It's basically an inflated public school model of what they want you to see, rather than what actually is. And again, I remember going through it and saying to myself, there seem to be giant leaps being made here from subject to subject. I mean, it was almost embarrassing at points. But I mean, they show you a cabin, and then they show you chains, and then they show you the ledgers of what slaves cost. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so what else is there? And then you turn the corner, and then oh look, we're now into the '60s and the '70s, and
Well,
there's a record of Ray Charles on the wall.
There's a huge time gap.
Yeah,
a huge time gap.
yeah, yeah. And I'm saying I'm not seeing anything about who owned slaves, why they owned them. I'm not hearing anything. You're not going to come across the term Jewish anywhere in that museum in the slightest. But yeah, I remember walking through it, and I thought to myself, so is this basically a let's make everybody feel bad museum? Or is what is this really? And that's it's unfortunate, but that's what a lot of those museums are. Is they're not really telling the truth. So yeah,
that was a huge revelatory thing for me to find out that again, one of those things that I had discovered when I was I had ended up for a peer-reviewed paper. I had ended up writing about um, Black Americans and their kind of their what you call it at, their kind of apprehensiveness to embrace a particular theological system. And so that caused me, and I wrote this around the time, I hadn't listened to your show just yet. This was before the pandemic hit. And I was tasked to do this for a conference that I was attending. And it caused me to go back and read a lot of Commonwealth letters and documents and look at various laws and all of these things. And it was so amazing just the going back and reading some of these individuals and some of the laws that were back then. And I discovered, which was again another head scratcher for me, was that one of the first states to institute slavery as a lifelong thing was New York, which is not a southern state. The last time I checked. And there were other northern states that instituted it too, and Missouri even had banned what they called interracial marriages, which I don't really like that term, but nevertheless. But one of the reasons why they did that was not because they were afraid that white people wouldn't marry black people for the sake of them being black. The fact of the matter is that just like you had mentioned, the Jewish cabal who was responsible for slavery was essentially doing the same thing that they're doing today. They had sent these individuals here with no reference of the culture, no reference of the national identity, no reference of the heritage, and they were bringing them over here. And these individuals were not assimilating into the culture. And so to prevent them from basically destroying the national identity, they passed these laws. It was not because they were black. That was just a staple feature. No, it was because these people were invaders.
Yeah.
That was the point. And they were attempting the very best they can to resolve this issue. And that's why they made, it was indentured servitude, but that's the reason why they had, life, slavery for lifelong. By the way, which was kind of interesting, you were a slave lifelong, but if you became a believer, a Christian, you were free from that, which is fascinating to me. So, they saw that their national identity and their national heritage was indeed scriptural. There were many, many groups within the Commonwealth of the country at the time who were very religious. Very devout believers. Even though there might have been some theological differences, and there certainly were during the time of that. But one of the reasons why they did that was because they had had an influx of illegal immigrants. Gee, that sounds very familiar, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that's the same playbook.
Yep, that's it.
Uh, so, so yeah, I mean that was an eye opener for me, as well. That these slave laws were not just because individuals were black, but because they were trying to deal with the invaders that were coming in into the country. And there you go.
And that was part of the plan too, kind of like what's going on now.
Yeah, man. I mean, what is it? History doesn't repeat; it rhymes.
There you go.
It's there. There we go. It's the same. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Same people singing the same song.
It's amazing.
Gee whiz.
I'll tell you what. Let me ask you this: if you've got some time, let's get in a time
By
machine.
the way, I have as much time as you want, so we can go for a while if you like.
Perfect. Let's get in a time machine and go back to 2020.
Yep.
That year fascinates me because that was as you know, that was a major dividing line among everyone. Who's going to buy it and who's not? So, where were you, your wife, your daughter, your family when all hell started to break loose in approximately March of 2020?
Wow. So that takes us back to the spring. What I was doing was I was teaching at a school in Colorado, and I just got home teaching from that school, and it was kind of interesting because that was when the 15 days to flatten the curve or to slow the spread. They all coalesced. They all sound the same. But we were like everyone, kind of waiting with bated breath. We didn't know what was going on at the time when so-called COVID hit. And so we kind of laid low for a little bit. We didn't panic, you know, and we just kind of said, if this ends up becoming, more than what it is, well, we'll just assess where we are and then go from there. So we watched a lot of we watched a lot of television. We watched the news, right? Kind of kept our ears to the street. I know that I was listening to talk radio at the time, and there were individuals who were basically questioning, the shot and the lockdown and things like that. So I was very, very aware of that. And then I started again. Again, you can call it a glitch, right? You had Fauci, who was, essentially, the sorcerer supreme, who would come out and basically say, masks don't work. It might, block a droplet, but it doesn't provide the protection to, the sky is falling. We all need to wear a mask. And I would scratch my head and go, well, he just said like a month ago that masks aren't effective. Now he's saying they are effective? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so then, enough time passes. And again, we're still involved in the co-op, by the way, the homeschool co-op with our families. My daughter at the time, she was involved in volleyball and things like that. And so, and Missouri was pretty interesting because we started off hard with the lockdowns at first, and then we would ease up when everybody else did. So we weren't like New York or California where they were locked down for time in memoriam. We were able to move about freely. The problem was that the counties bought it, and so they were putting out restrictions which they shouldn't have done. Which was not their jurisdiction to do. They were violating all sorts of laws by doing this. And so we had decided as a family, we're not gonna wear any masks. If we have to wear them, if we are in a position where we can leave, we're going to, and that was most of the time. When I go into Walmart, I'm not wearing one. You're not wearing one. We definitely wanted to teach this to our daughter. Um, and so that's what we did. When we went to a restaurant, we didn't wear any masks. When we went to the store, we didn't wear any masks. We got approached several times by individuals who, hey, you need to wear a mask. No, I don't. They don't work, you know. And by the way, you need to mind your own business. Or you're wearing a mask, so you're protected, quote unquote. You can leave me alone. So we did that. And then, of course, when it really kicked into high gear when the rollout happened, under the auspice of Donald Trump. I understand that now, why this took place. But at the same time, when it rolled out and they were doing the shots and things like that, we actually sat down as a family, all of us. And again, like I said, my daughter was very young at the time, and I felt like, if this conversation, usually we try to keep her out of kind of world events and things like that. But this was something different. With all these lockdowns happening globally, with all of these mandates happening all over the place, we would, Sean, it was so crazy. We would drive places and there wasn't a car in sight.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were the only ones on the road. It was absolutely crazy. And so we actually sat down as a family and we basically dealt with the cognitive, if I could use this term, I'm using it on purpose. We vaccinated ourselves from our cognitive dissonance, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So we sat down and we said, look, I think the government is trying to kill us. I think that these shots are poison. We need to make a resolve that no matter what happens, if I lose my job, if I, no matter what happens, we will not take them ever. And that was a difficult conversation to have, right? Because my daughter's young, and we don't want to bring her into stuff like this, right? But we have to deal with the world as it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? This, we can't just hide this now. We got to deal with it. And so I said, I could lose my job over this because I'm not taking the shot. And if my job mandates that I take it, I'm quitting. And so my wife was sitting there, and she had said, honey, I support you 100%. I don't want you taking it. Now at the time, my wife was very sick too. And so we ended up having a wonderful doctor who was a chiropractor, by the way, who works with frequency tinctures. And so he kind of helped us to kind of deal with some things as well. But we sat down as a family and just talked through, and we had all resolved that we were not going to do it, that we weren't going to take the shot, that we, from this point forward. My mom, not so much. We tried to talk to my mom. My mom, out of fear, ended up getting them. And then I mentioned in my letter, my best friend, his wife ended up getting them. I was so angry because it didn't have to be that way. Anyway, so at the end of 2020, and we're talking about the elections around that time, right? So
how did your let me ask you one quick question here. How did your workplace ultimately handle all of this?
My workplace, they kind of they did not, surprisingly, they did not force the shots on us. They did compel us to wear masks, but as where I work, it's a big campus. so I can avoid a lot. So, they basically said, well, if you don't have to take the shot, but you do have to wear a mask. And so I'd go, yeah, okay, fine. And then I wouldn't wear it. There was a point in time where they had, when the government was basically demanding that people have the vaccine cards. So I'm not gonna lie, Sean, I actually made one up and printed it out.
There you go.
And walked around. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I found it, man. I made a fake vaccination card, and I carried that thing around. But I did it for the whole entire family. Had it laminated and everything. And but yeah, the job that I had, they did not compel me to take any shots. And I think they did that knowing that, because most of the individuals that work where I work, they don't they they are not they saw what was coming down the pike too. And so if they decided that they were going to have people demand to take the shot, I'd say about two thirds of them would quit.
There you go.
Yeah. So they said, well, we're not going to take the shots, but you have to wear a mask though. Of course, which I didn't comply. So, my job was very accommodating in that regard, which was cool. But even if they weren't, then we were resolved that I would quit and find something else to do, because I wasn't going to put my life or the life of my family in jeopardy. That wasn't going to happen. So,
very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the end of 2020 then, around the election.
Yeah.
So what took place around then?
So that's when we knew, when all of the stuff started coming out about the election being stolen and things like that, and we already knew that the fix was in. It wasn't until after Joe Biden got in where all of a sudden vaccines were okay. Because remember, before then, when Trump was doing it, I wouldn't have my daughter take the vaccine. I wouldn't take the vaccine. I wouldn't do this, that, and the other. Right now, when Joe Biden's in office, now everybody's lining up. Right, miles and miles of people getting shot. Right. That's when we basically, there were two things that we did. First of all, we looked at one another and said, I'm glad that the hard talk that we had, several months ago, right? But then we went, I got the sinking feeling that we all were just lied to. And it strengthened our resolve as a family even more, not to do anything the government told us. Yeah, so we had basically dug our heels in even more, and said, wherever we go now, we're not giving any masks, we're not giving any shot information. You just tell them to go stick it, because we're not doing that. We're definitely not. We're not playing the game. So. Yeah, I mean, after 2020, when we saw all that stuff went down, and now all of a sudden everything's okay. Everything's okay. The vaccines are safe. Well, they weren't safe. They weren't safe 8 months ago. But why were you guys complaining about them being dangerous 8 months ago? But now they're safe now. So no, we're not doing this. We're not playing this game. We are choosing to opt out of everything. And so that's what happened basically at the end of 2020 and onward from there. And I think it's around this time, it was after 2020, close to 2021, that I came across your channel, or your podcast. And then, when did you do your speech?
That would have been August of 2021.
Yeah, that was around that time. Yep. So, one of my friends had posted it on Facebook. We were still, there were still counties, even after Missouri lifted their their quote unquote emergency mandate or whatever, there were still counties that were holding on for dear life. One of them was Kansas City, the city itself, holding on for dear life to this thing. Um, that's one of my friends had posted your school speech, and then that's when I came across your video, and then I went, oh, man, this guy, who is this guy? This guy's got it. He knows this thing is killing people. We had figured that out. I believe at that time he called it a bioweapon. I didn't use that term, but I knew that these shots were killing people. I knew that. And so I thought I got to check this guy out. And so that's when I came across your channel and heard your podcast, and became an avid believer, an avid listener ever since.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then since then, again, I mentioned in my first letter, we really attempted to try to keep our daughter in things and normalize things as we possibly could. So she still played volleyball. As a matter of fact, the Christian group that she belonged to, most of them did both. Most of them weren't masked. Most of them weren't jabbed. We ended up playing volleyball the same. I mean, it's like it's nothing happened. She ended up going over friends' houses. They came over our house. Again, we were very, very fortunate to have that mindset. That we were going to live our lives. We weren't going to scare ourselves to oblivion. So at that point, we turned off the TV with the news because we just assumed that we're going to be lied to. So we just turned that off, and we began to start to, we had lots of time, so we would just dig for ourselves, start reading things, talk again as a family. We always did that. We would talk about things that were going on in the world, try to keep ourselves abreast of what was happening. We would talk about situations and being involved in those and how we would deal with them. We certainly complained about individuals that would wear masks, 2 or 3 masks on. Come on. See, there were people that had 4 masks on.
That's right.
It's just stupid. Driving in a car by themselves.
Yep.
Just totally cutting off oxygen to their system.
Remember the pantyhose over the face? Remember that one?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? No, do you remember? It was something that looked like a bee suit. It was like something out of
Yep.
It was something like out of E.T. with the people who would wear like the kind of the oh my gosh, like the suit.
Yep.
It was incredible. These individuals. Oh my goodness.
And that someone would look at that and say, "Yep, that person's got it. They've got the answer to our problems." It's amazing.
They're the safe ones, right? Are you kidding me? These people are crazy.
Yeah.
Why would you walk around like that? So yeah, I mean, even now we see individuals driving. I cannot believe it. I want to go up to them and just rip the dang mask off. Why are you wearing a mask?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. So yeah. Anyway.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's still a woman down the street who puts on rubber gloves to get her mail out of the mailbox.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's so sad. It's amazing.
Oh man, I don't laugh to tease. I laugh because it's just
you have to, or else you start crying.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So while that was happening, again, that caused me to do a lot of digging. So again, you on your podcast, when you would bring up things, it caused me to research stuff. And again, I think that's when I fully of course, when I wrote the first letter, I was already out of the Matrix. I basically, um, um, I basically took the red pill, and we were firing on all cylinders at that point. Because I could not believe how much I had been lied to. I mean, it was just, I could not believe it. And then that's when I mentioned to you, Sean, about um, the kind of the glitches that I recognized and that I remember um, from way back when things started to connect um, a little bit more clearly now that I understood why things were happening and who was doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it became so much more clear. So, um,
That's.
so
I mean, I'll tell you, that's one of the things too that I wrestle with from time to time when I'll ask myself why aren't more people waking up, even though they are, and we know that they are, and there's no way that we could actually gauge how many. I mean, that's an impossible equation to figure out, but um, I'll just wrestle occasionally in my head with why is it that people don't ask more questions and think critically about what's going on and even have a suspicious nature to things.
mhm,
And I mean I know that it's basically been trained out of people to essentially, of course, not ask questions and just go along and just do what you're told and just maintain and a thousand other things. But if you look at someone and you say you're being lied to and the people lying to you want you dead, I mean, if that's all you say to them, you would think that everybody would say, who's lying to me and how do they want to kill me?
mhm,
And then that you would
yeah,
think that they would ask even more questions. Well, when do they want to kill me? What's the method they want to use? How long have they been lying to us? I mean, it's the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And you would think
yeah,
that more people would do that, but they just don't stop and think to themselves about any of that. And I know that there are people who do, which is great, but that right there, I think, just continues to show how effective the brainwashing really is and the grip that either Satan or other entities have over people. So much so to the point, again, where you look at someone and you tell them, again, that you've been lied to and the people lying to you want you dead. And they go, oh, well. And then they just go about their lives doing whatever it is that they were doing.
mhm,
It would be like, I would equate it to something like this, although it's probably different with everybody, but if you had a spouse who cheated on you, I mean, most people would say who, what, where, when, why, and how.
mhm,
But other people would be very dismissive and say, well, they cheated on me, they're an asshole, and then they just go about their lives not wondering anything.
mm,
So I honestly think like that's kind of one of the dividing lines just between people and their personalities. I mean, it really is sort of a this way or a that way, kind of thing, a very black and white way of looking at it. That a person is either suspicious and curious or they are not.
yeah,
And as you've heard me say on the show, I don't think that we can walk through life not being suspicious and not being curious and expect to survive.
yeah, yeah. I think to add on to what you're saying, this is this is I think a couple things based upon what you're saying is that's why it was important for us as a family to sit down and deal with whatever cognitive dissonance that we had. Because again, I think cognitive dissonance is is what gets people not to question things because they if the question that I had, if I really know the answer, how would it change everything? And I
Exactly.
don't know if I don't want things to change. I, I I want things to be as simple as they are. And, you know, um, you cognitive dissonance, I think, it's kind of like, how, when you are presented with information, again, that rubs up against your perspective, but you're not ready or prepared to deal with it and to ask questions, you just automatically reject it, as being ridiculous, or that can't ever happen, or even going to personal attack. So, well, you're just nothing but a tinfoil pyramid hat wearing guy. What do you know? Um, you know, um, so I think cognitive dissonance is a thing that most people don't understand, and they don't want to deal with. And two, we have been taught that individuals are basically good. People are good. We have good traits. However, there's a logical leap that people make. So they go, well, first premise, people are basically good. Conclusion, therefore there isn't any evil, or people can't be evil. That's not true.
Yeah.
um, you know, these two things can exist at the same time. Um, um, I think people take leaps in logic that all people are basically good. Therefore, no one can possibly be this evil to where they want to kill us. They don't even know us. My friend, a person who is this evil doesn't have to know you.
That's right.
they just they don't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't care about your kids. They just want you gone. So I think those two things, if you can reconcile those things, I think individuals would be more apt to ask questions and seek the answers, and no matter where they lead, they'll be comfortable with them. But until people don't deal with those, they'll continue to think like this, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask you this too. This is one of those social dynamic things and sociological things that I always find fascinating also, of course, is that throughout this entire time, one of the things that we saw people reacting in not only different ways, but we saw people responding to complete strangers in different ways also. Some people would become confrontational with others when they would disagree with them. Of course, there's all the videos of endless individuals wearing masks and running up to people who weren't wearing them and screaming and shouting at them and a thousand other things. And one of the people who's a friend of mine, and he's been a guest on the show also. He's a lawyer in California, AJ Gochik. He's a perfect example of one of these individuals who reaches the end of his rope, knows what the truth is, and doesn't hesitate to confront individuals in public who are doing the wrong thing. I mean, he's told some heartbreaking stories on the show of being in a CVS or a Walgreens or a pharmacy, and he's standing next to a mother who's standing next to her young daughter who's about to jab her to death. Yeah. And he looks at him and he says, "What are you doing? Don't give them that. It's a biological weapon. She'll get sick and she'll probably die." And says this to their faces. And then again, you would think that when a complete stranger confronts another human being, a fellow human being, with that direct of an honest approach to a very serious subject, that they would ask more questions instead of course, becoming very defensive and then saying, "Mind your own business, it's my daughter," blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, my question to you is during this time, have you, your wife, your daughter, anybody I mean, have you had a confrontation with someone like that in public where either they've confronted you for not doing a particular thing, or you've said, "You know what? To hell with it. I mean, I'm going to tell these people, what's going on because they need to know."
Yeah, well, the one particular example sticks out to me, and that was my wife, my husband. I'm sorry, my husband. My my best friend's wife. And we had she had health issues before, a long time ago. And um, so she was talking about going to the doctor and doing that stuff, right? And I guess her doctor had told her that the shot would possibly help her breathing. And we were like, "What?"
Yeah.
And she was like, "Yeah, he might say that they might help him with the breathing." And I was like, "No, you don't. No, no, no. The opposite is going to happen. No, you're going to have more trouble breathing. Don't. Yeah, I mean, we pleaded with her, do not get these. Do not get these. You're going to now at the time we didn't know that it would actually break your DNA. But we said, do not get these first. Please, please, please don't. And then a couple of weeks, she had told us, yeah, I ended up getting. And we were like, what?
Yeah.
So, you're, I mean, just the fact that we're your best friend and we're telling you, don't get this because of some of the stuff that's coming out right now about the side effects of these shots. Don't get these, and you went and got it anyway. And now, and ever since then, she's had problems. And it seems to be getting worse. Um, and again, we tried to give her protocols and tell her the proper thing that she had to do. And again, it almost goes through one ear and out the other. It's rather odd. And I think during the earlier time too, just being confronted was the earlier point of 2020 or the later point of 2020 and 2021 when the mask was at its fever pitch. And so, I remember one time we went to, where was it? I believe it was, I think we went to the store, a store of some type, and we walked in, and they were like, "Hey, buddy, do you have a mask?" And we were like, "No, you don't have a mask." And you could see like the face, how like the face transforms.
Yeah.
You could see the panic.
Yeah.
It was so crazy. How people would just switch, and all of a sudden the individual who we started walking away. Like we would just say, no, we don't have it. We don't have a mask. We're here to get our things and go. The guy ended up. He literally started screaming in his mask. You need to wear a mask. What are you doing? You realize you're putting people's lives at risk. No. It was crazy. And I think he followed us halfway through the store, and then ended up leaving. We ended up getting our stuff and going out real quickly, but he had ended up coming with like 2 or 3 other people, getting ready to confront us about not wearing our mask while we were in the store. And I was with my daughter at the time, and we had talked about it while we were driving home. And again, I had mentioned to her, I said, "See, this is why we needed to have this talk, so that we could be ready to deal with this when this comes up." Um, before we had it, right when we had the talk, there wasn't really anything. But a month or so had passed, and we ended up, going to that store and having that small little argument with that individual. All of us were ready, and from that point on, it was so funny. My daughter at the time was like, I'm not wearing this, because of the fact that we were able to deal with that and work through that. So those two instances stick out: the time when we confronted our friend, and the time when we went to that particular store. Again, I can't remember which one it was, but we got approached. The guy was, he was all red in the face. you're causing more trouble screaming into your mask. I mean, at least if you're going to do it, take it off. You know what I'm saying? But man, I mean, he was unhinged.
Yeah.
It was nuts. So
See, that's those are the kinds of things that, again, just with a little bit of time passing, again, 1, 2, even 3 years passing, all of the sudden, that doesn't seem to exist anymore.
it's like it never happened.
Right, exactly. And there's no acknowledgement that what they were doing was wrong.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like 2020 never existed.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's why this is not going to end well. I mean, something's got to give here, because if there's zero accountability and zero recognition, and everybody's just allowed to explain away what happened and what went on with a, well, we all panicked and we all did this and it wasn't our fault, and I mean, they just rationalize away their past behavior without any accountability whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Again, even among family members or even friends, I mean, again, some of them wore masks, some of them took the shots, and then some of them didn't. But there's no recognition that one side was wrong and the other side was right.
Yes,
It's amazing.
I mean, it's incredible too. Just going back to the education thing, that the very same education system that abused your kids, that locked down your kids, that forced your kids to take the jab, parents are sending their kids back there.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, that is nuts to me. It's like, and again, that is the cognitive dissonance. If I actually push myself over the border and believe that these individuals are nefarious, then what else are these people lying to me about that want me dead? What else? It's not. I think it's. I think a lot of people know this, but again, what will it mean if I actually go forward and believe that the systems that are set in place that say that they want to help are actually working against me for my own demise? That means I have to question everything. I got to question not only the education system, but I have to question what are my children being taught? I have to question, what the medical field is doing. I have to question what entertainment is teaching me. I have to question even what the news is telling me. Like, that's overwhelming for most people. It does get better, but to take that first step, oh my goodness.
Right.
That's huge. But when you do, man, I mean, so many things make sense. Yeah, don't. Yeah, if I could say anything, if anyone, don't take the first step. Don't be afraid to find out. Um, um, don't do it, because if you are, you're not only going to be ignorant, but it's possibly you're going to be ignorant and dead at the same time. That's the worst way to go. Um, it's awful. I do want to touch a little bit on the AI stuff.
Sure.
And I don't have anything. I don't have anything in front of me, but I do have perhaps a hot take. I've been thinking about this for a minute, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. So obviously, we know. I know you know who Naval Harari is. Basically, the brainchild of Klaus Schwab, right?
Yep.
World Economic Forum and all that. He wrote a book called Homo Deus. And he essentially, basically the premise of it is he, just like we see throughout all of the culture and society, he's essentially trying to take Skynet and put it in us. right? That's kind of the idea: the singularity, transhumanism, all of that. It's all there. One of the things that I find interesting is the technology creep that is occurring. So you mentioned on your last episode, the advent of the cell phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how the digital twin. By the way, I'm probably going to watch that. I started watching a little bit of it last night, and it was so captivating. I'm going to finish the rest of that with the digital twin, but um, 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 the technology creep, starting with the cell phone, and then starting with desktop computers, and then starting with the advent of the internet, and then starting with metadata and meta searching, and then starting with all of these things. This mission creep, and all of it, of course, is very scary. But I have an optimistic take on this. I I think it's really interesting that every technological advance that occurs within this sphere always fails. It always fails. So think about a couple of years ago or several years ago with the advent of self-driving trucks, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then we find that was a bust, right? Because you know you can put a self-driving car on a straight highway, but what about a windy highway with lots of cars, traffic, right? It doesn't work as well. Plus, you need people to man it. So, to operate it and things like that. So that was a bust. And then you had Amazon basically project where you go into a grocery store and put whatever you want in the cart and have all these cameras everywhere, right? And all you can do is just walk out at the checkout line, and it basically, you could basically pay for your grocery without having to take out your card to do it. It was all AI essentially. Well, that failed, as we know that Amazon is pulling all of those stores who did that. They're pulling them all away because it doesn't work. Even AI, and the advancement of artificial intelligence, like things like Gemini and ChatGPT and all of them. What's fascinating about that is um, even the programs themselves cannot mimic one's writing signature. That everybody has a unique way and a unique style of writing. And ChatGPT, no matter how well it's able to articulate that, it cannot copy, as great as it is, essentially your style of which you write,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's a bust. Even these, and I'm not trying to be, um, um, I'm not trying to be salacious or anything else like that, but even these sex dolls
Right.
that got traction. I mean, that was a bust too because they tried to put that into the Gen Pop, but no one bought them. Nobody cared, and they're essentially relegated to the degenerates
Mm-hmm.
who essentially. So that all of these technological advances that were designed to bring us into the singularity have all been a bust. They've all been a bust. Every last one of them. The Google glasses, bust. The Apple glasses, or the Apple viewing thing, has been a bust, right?
Yeah.
They pulled it off the shelf. I think that the individuals, the controllers, whatever you want to call them, right, the Bolshevik, the Jewish cabal, what they don't count on, or what they miss, is the fact that human beings are not only biological, we are also spiritual. We have a spirit in us, and you cannot, as much as you cannot test tube that. You cannot put that in a beaker. You cannot grow it out of the ground. You cannot technologically make something immaterial. I think the fact that we are immaterial as well as material, the fact that we are spirit and body, the fact that we have a mind and a brain, I think will end up being, that's the reason why I'm optimistic. That's the reason why these things keep failing, is not because you can't digitize a spirit. You can't digitize something that's immaterial. And so I think that even though this is scary, these are dark times, scary times, I'm very optimistic at the fact that these things keep failing, because what they believe is that we're just only material. We're not spiritual. That we're nothing but just natural meat bags for their enjoyment. But no, we're more than just that. What do you think?
First of all, you're 100% right. I agree with you. And I'm not just saying that because we're talking. I do agree with you. I also think that we could talk about this forever because much like you, I find this fascinating. I think that what you just said is accurate also because, well, basically, like you said, it causes individuals from a decision-making standpoint to lean on their morals and values. And the issue of artificial intelligence and all of the so-called tools of convenience that it allegedly brings, there is that moral, spiritual component that, as you say again, the enemy is trying to break. They know that it's there. I mean, that's the thing with the enemy is that they know that God is real. They're trying to convince people that he isn't, which is the work of the devil, of course. But but all of these things, these toys, these gimmicks, these games, these methods, they're all leaning a little at a time on people's, like you say, spirit. It's leaning on their morals and values and causing them to either buckle to it or make a decision about it, to either accept it or dismiss it. And I agree with you that endless people are dismissing it. And they're getting frustrated with the abundance of it and seeing it all over the place. Like again, like you said, numerous examples can be brought up, and it shows again a great deal of the brainwashing. One image, well, two of them actually that immediately pop into my mind. The mayor in the town where I live, he drives a Prius. I think he drives a Prius, and it's an electric Prius. So he literally thinks that he's helping himself and everybody around him by driving an electric vehicle. In fact, he doesn't even know that the words that come out of his mouth are not even his own. So he's quite literally said on the record, well, I'm doing my part, quote unquote. Now, we've all heard that phrase, do your part. Just, everybody just needs to step up and do their part. That's not him talking. That's evil propaganda. That's somebody else telling him to say it, and then he just repeats it without thought. He, of course, also doesn't know, nor thinks about it, that his car insurance is higher than everybody else's, that he uses more electricity in his home because he has to charge his car more than anybody else. And the mind frame of the people who drive around in an electric automobile, for example, looking at all the other vehicles around them, knowing that the vast majority are not electric, that individual actually believes that they're ahead of the curve, that they're doing something that's morally sound and the right thing to do, and they have their reasons and whatever else, when in fact, of course, the exact opposite is true. I mean, they're driving around cooking their own genitals on a constant basis, giving themselves electromagnetic radiation and 1,000 other things. So there's always that, like you said earlier, the cognitive dissonance that is associated with the very participation in certain artificial intelligence tools and gimmicks and things of that nature. I would say this also, though. The thing with the enemy is that they play the numbers game, and they do it well, and they certainly did it well with the COVID shots. So you integrate the usage of the COVID shots into the usage of artificial intelligence, and they are linked together very specifically and very on purpose.
Yeah.
And not only
with the nanotech and all of that
stuff. No doubt. Yep. And it's not just Noval Harari or the World Economic Forum, it's our own government. I mean, our own government had this plan written out on paper in patent form decades ago. So they play the long game, and they play the numbers game, and they know that if they introduce a particular thing into society, then there will always be a hardened percentage that will just buy into it. And then, of course, they already know that there's going to be a hardened percentage that never buys into it. But it's that middle ground. It's the people on the fence or standing on the tightrope, where if they can just keep nudging them a little bit, toward the immoral, so to speak, and leaning on their spirit, as you said, then eventually they'll get those people.
Yeah.
So, you look at something like again, the COVID shots, upwards of 75% of the population took at least one dose, if not upwards of 80+%. I mean, that was a big experiment, and that had a very devastating result on human decision making, because ultimately that was artificial intelligence too. You had robots telling doctors, like I said recently on the show, you had robots telling doctors to tell patients to do a thing, and then they just did it without thought or favor or the thought of the consequences or whatever. Well, they're my doctor, I believe them. They read emails and they know what they're talking about all the time, so I'll just believe them. That worked. And then, of course, you have a tool, like you said earlier with Amazon, for example, these self-checkout kiosk things. And the fact that these exist in stores now and are becoming more abundant, and yet the workers who are human beings who are working there don't know that they're being edged out of work. One kiosk at a time. And they've even, of course, changed the design of the kiosks, where they have these giant kiosks now, where it is quite literally its own conveyor belt. There's just no human at the end. You've got your computer at the front, a giant conveyor belt, and then all your groceries are stacked up on top of each other at the end of the conveyor belt, and then you have to do the packing. And then, that's it. So I don't think the enemy's going to quit. I think they're going to keep playing as many hands as they can play. And unfortunately, there's always going to be people who buy into it. But I do agree with you 100% that the percentage of people not buying into it is growing.
Yeah.
And it could just be flat out distaste and just pissing people off and, just wearing on people. And they're going, you know what? This isn't a convenience. Can I please get a human being? And they, they just beg for it eventually. But yeah, I find it fascinating, and I think that it's clearly part of the script, because again, you look at these companies and these corporations and everybody who's going along with it and still believing it's a good thing, even though, of course, like you said too, there's endless failures, like Ford, for example, Ford Motor Company. Eliminating their electric vehicles and saying, we can't do this. No one's buying this. We can't do this. I mean, that's a massive victory.
Yeah. But or the fact that our entertainment industry is collapsing right before our eyes because no one is buying what these people are putting out.
Correct. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Just very quickly, that's so poignant and perfect. I was earlier today, again, I was exercising, and then I was doing that thing that I do where I thought, I'm going to listen to Glenn Beck and see what this dumbass has to say. And sure enough, here's what here's what I heard, and I couldn't believe my ears, because this will show you how out of touch he is. He openly admitted to talking about when he used to work at Fox News, how Fox News were gatekeepers. He actually used that phrase.
Wow.
And I thought the irony. I mean,
Wow.
the irony is palpable. But then he said that he has created a television series or an online TV channel where he now gets to teach people about historic events, because he wants people to learn about real history, so he says.
Yeah, okay.
And so he puts right, exactly. So he puts out this video, which was one of the first episodes about Sputnik. And I thought to myself, of all of the things to teach people about, that's your out of the gate subject that you choose. And then I thought, well, what he ended up having on next is he had on this old woman. He took a phone call, and he of course was buttering himself up. And, well, did you see the program last night? And she goes, I did, and you're the greatest, and I can't wait to show my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids, and I want them to learn about real history because school is terrible and blah blah blah. And then I thought, my last thought and sort of overarching thought was, he has no idea that people don't watch TV anymore. He has no idea that people do so many other things now in their lives that the last thing they'll probably want to do is tune in and listen to Glenn Beck give them a false history lesson about something that doesn't matter. And I thought to myself again, that's how dead asleep he is, and how dead asleep he doesn't seem to understand how awake people are. Mm-hmm. And again, if it ties into artificial intelligence in any way, I think that right there, if you were to twist the definition of artificial intelligence, he actually believes that he's intelligent with the thing that he's doing, when in fact he isn't. Yeah. So yeah.
Glenn Beck, the guy who puts his name on everybody. The guy who puts his name on things that other people write. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. All those books that he claimed that he was writing on his own, and all of those, all those other authors that he had on on his books, and I'm saying, you didn't write this.
Yeah, you didn't write this. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But I agree with you. The artificial intelligence discussion is fascinating. They're going to continue to make inroads again. The digital banking, things of that nature. But like we know, eventually you have to talk to a human being, and eventually you got to get humans to interact with one another and do business with one another, and there's no duplicating that. You can't artificially create that.
Yeah,
it's too authentic.
Yes, and I think just to add to your point is one of the reasons why people are buying into artificial. I mean, think about this: you have artificial intelligence versus an intelligent designer, right? You separate humanity from an intelligent designer. What do you replace it with?
Correct.
Something that's artificial.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's well said.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.